Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to the Expansive CEO podcast. I have a special guest. I realize that I say that every single time, but I have such a special guest today, and I'm so excited for this conversation with Lindsey Bonadonna, who she's an optimist, literally one of the most optimistic people I've met for sure, an encourager, a social entrepreneur, and the founder of B, a business that encourages humans to slow down, get curious, and nourish their whole selves with thoughtfully curated, nutrient-dense, taste-good foods and feel-good experiences made easy and crafted to take the second guessing out of self-care. So that was a long sentence, and it also perfectly describes the intricacies and the nuances of what you're creating at B here in Cincinnati. So part of what's special is that this is local to me, y'all. This is in Cincinnati, and Lindsey is creating a brick and mortar experience that is just so special. So we are going to talk today about how she has done this from her intuition, building a business that she loves and that I am so excited to be a part of. We'll get there too. So, Miss Lindsey.
Hello.
Hello. I see your emotion already, and I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast and so happy to be in B. And we'll talk about what that means. Please continue.
I am so honored to be here. And Hannah, I just think, as I think about the synchronicities that happen in our lives when we're open to them, being able to have you in my life and to have this opportunity to just talk about maybe a different way to approach entrepreneurship than what we're taught feels so good. And to just hear you talk about me like that and what and what I'm doing, I don't think I've really slowed down enough throughout the process to really hear and consider it. So yeah, I didn't think that I was going to cry, but why not cry before we even start talking? This is great.
Right? Perfect. Get it out of the way.
Yes,
And
yes.
also, right, if there aren't tears, did you really have a deep conversation? So
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
So Lindsey, I also, for just so everyone knows, B is a multi-layered experience, right? And so one of the fun things, the reason that I said I am also a part of B is because I am part of the co-working space where, if you're watching on YouTube, Lindsey is literally sitting right now. It's a gorgeous space, literally an art studio, which, I mean, for my creative heart, is absolutely perfect. But there's the co-working office space that we share. There's the yoga studio right next door, Kindred Flow Yoga.
Yes.
And just so wonderful. And then the market downstairs. And so this is also very special timing because this is right lined up with the grand opening of B. And so that is really, really special. And so we're going to promote all of that. And it's one of the reasons for doing this podcast today. But beyond that, it's not just about the one thing, and it's not just about the opening. It's about, like we're talking about, building a business with intention and with intuition and following those nudges, following your instincts, and seeing how differently that can, how differently it can unfold than when you're efforting and pushing and doing all the things that you think you're supposed to do to build a business. So we'll get into that too, because we both have done that before as well. We have experienced the the hustle and the effort, and then you have to grind it out and you have to be miserable and you have to prove yourself
Uh,
and all of that. We've done that. And now we're doing something different. So, Lindsey, what do you want to tell me first about B, what it is, and then what it means to
yeah,
you?
it's so wild. It still feels very unbelievable to me how it's all unfolding. But kind of the short version of the story is that so my friend Kara opened Kindred Flow Yoga Studio up here in May of 2021. And I've been honored to teach here. And then I've also had my coaching offices up here since last year. And the business that was on the first floor closed in May of 2022. And, we had kind of talked, oh, it'd be cool. And, I talked to a bunch of my entrepreneurial friends in Wyoming, which is amazing because we have over 130 female identifying entrepreneurs here in our 2.5 miles. Like it's wild.
Oh, and
So I was like,
for anyone listening, Wyoming is a little like district in Cincinnati. So we're still
yes,
talking
yes,
Cincinnati, Ohio here, not Wyoming the state.
not the state. Yes. And, so I was like, oh, you should open up like a smoothie and juice bar. That would be so cool. And I'll shop there every day and it'll be great. But I don't want to do it. Ugh, yucky. So, nobody wanted to do that because it wasn't their vision, of course, right? And we all have our unique brands of genius, as my friend says. And it was a very random conversation with a woman that I've never met before, that my friend Sarah, who owns the coffee shop next door, introduced me to. And at this point in time, I had the idea, but it wasn't clean. Like I didn't have a business plan. So I shared this idea with her, and she was just like, "That's amazing." And I don't know how I can help you, but I know investors, I know this, but like you need to do this. And she's a very spiritual person. And I was just like, I walked away from that conversation. I'm like, a stranger I've never met that I just like kind of threw up this idea on her, just said that I should do it. So then I was like, alrighty, let me meet with a building owner who's an older gentleman who is like, I feel like he looks at me as maybe like an unofficial daughter. He's been really wonderful to work with, but he's had the reputation of being like a tough dude to work with. So I met with him. It was August 15th, and I went into that meeting with the intention of checking this dream off my list, that I would meet him and he would be difficult and I would see the space and I would be like, this is an S show, because this is a historical building built in the late 1800s as well, just as kind of like a fun fact. That was actually a market back then, which is really cool. But the meeting went amazing. And then I was like, oh man, all right, let's do it. So it was in that time that and I worked with my business strategist, Stacy Kessler, on this. I really put the cart before the horse in a lot of different ways. Like I didn't know if it was all going to work out. I didn't know how lease negotiations were going to go, but I just had a feeling that if it didn't work out, I would have all the information and data, right? So I spent 3 months, not even, it was less than 3 months, doing all the projections, writing a business plan, figuring out what the business is, mission, vision, values, like all the things that come into play with it. And then it all just started working out, and kind of what came out of this working with my business strategist. And I also worked with Stacy on my coaching business as well. But she has this way of bringing out your deepest soul's purpose. And what came out of it was creating this whole building experience that encourages people to slow down and get curious and nourish their whole selves. And then just aspiring to make it as easy as possible. And kind of the bigger picture of this is that as a health and life coach, it's been my experience and also my personal experience too, on my journey, that if I can make nourishing yourself as easy as possible, just with food to start off with, because we all know we need food, right? And try to make it accessible and price conscious and all these things. So anybody who walks in can know that whatever they grab is going to nourish their body in some way and be met with really, pleasant, kind humans, which we all need, that if they grab that one thing and they feel good about it, and then they start to get more curious, and then they start to heal their bodies. And then as they heal their bodies and they start to feel better, then they start to look into their life things that maybe aren't aligned. And then maybe they feel empowered to make bold decisions. And then maybe they start to come up to yoga and meditation and crystal bowls and like all of that kind of stuff on the second floor, that they would then grow to have the capacity and energy to create their own unique ripple in the world. So while as much as B is about smoothies and smoothie bowls and yoga and like, yay, all that fun stuff, underneath it all, it's really about helping people feel better so that they can go out and feel emboldened and confident to go do what they feel called to do in their lives, and start to say no to the things that aren't serving them. Because, I hate to be cliche in that, life, we have lots of time, right? So, which is cool, even though I struggle with the myth that there is never enough time, but I'm working on that. We have so much time, and we're also the only ones that we spend our entire lives with. So I think it's really important to bring that to the forefront, because we were put on this earth for a very specific reason. And I read somewhere once there's like a 1 in 400 billion chance that you're born a human instead of like a plant or a bug or like an animal. So when I look at it through that, I'm like, whoa, there's a 1 in 400 billion chance that you were put here in front of me and I'm getting to meet you. And there's something special about you because the universe saw that you needed to come to life. So like, how can we help support that? And then also, as we kind of grow in our own journeys, not only have the confidence, the capability, the energy, the excitement to create our own ripple, but like also when we have that energy and excitement and that capacity, we can also help other people see what's possible in their lives. And that's powerful, because we're all in this together. And I think oftentimes we forget that the person that we're sitting across from or in the same room with like is also human.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that all makes sense, but y'all can let me know how
Oh my goodness. So the things, so many things resonate. And it's why, we connected so deeply in the first place. And I'm thinking back to like the timeline. I'm like, okay, wait, when did we actually connect? Because it had to have been right around September or so, when you were like because you knew B was going to be a thing, but it was like just barely starting.
Yeah. Gosh, how, because I feel simultaneously that we've known each other forever and then like have not known each other that long at all.
Right? Yes. And that's
Yes.
what it feels like. And yet this year it's already June 7th today. So somehow we're almost halfway through the year. So yeah, the things that were really, really resonating for me were
It was March.
it was March of this year.
Mm-hmm.
What? Are you serious?
Yes.
It does feel like so much longer than that. That's so weird. 3 months, that's it. There's no way. Okay. Well, if we sound like old friends, it's because our souls have known each other for much longer, I think.
Many lifetimes, yes.
Yes. And the things that were really, really resonating for me were the sense of taking small steps, taking,
Mm.
like making, when you say making it easy, it's the, you don't have to dive in head first. You don't have to go all at once, right? Like, come be comfortable. And then, yeah, come up to a yoga class and check that out. Come listen to the crystal bowls and just relax for a while. Come have a nourishing experience for your body and for your heart and for your spirit and for your mind, right? Like, there's the nourishment, like, is not just one level, but there are different entry points. So people can
Yes.
come to yoga and then, oh, wait, there's all this awesome stuff downstairs. Or they can come for a crystal bowl Reiki healing session and then notice, oh, look at all these other businesses that are up here. Like,
Yes.
interesting, right? So the different entry points. It's I talk about gentleness so much, and
Mm.
you hear me talk about it all the time, but how can we make these processes more gentle? because when I'm working with finances, people carry a lot of guilt, shame. They have a lot of feelings that come up around their finances, and it just doesn't have to hurt. It doesn't have to be scary. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be traumatic to go back through all of that. It can be gentle, and we can do
Yes.
easily. So yeah.
And I look at that in so many aspects of our life because we do have this, like all or nothing mentality that we've developed, in our country's history. And it doesn't have to be that way. If you want it to be that way and you're making a conscious choice because that's what works best for you and it's an empowered choice, I think that's rock on. But I don't think that we've been taking enough time to slow down and be like, wait, can I just like not do it that way? Because again, kind of coming into, we have more time than we think that we do, like on this earth. Change, everything happens best when it's like one little simple swap at a time. And whether it's something like instead of drinking 12 Mountain Dews a day, you drink 11 in one glass of water. Like that's a big deal and something to celebrate, right? It's like one little thing at a time. And the gentleness that you're talking about, Hannah, that word makes me feel just lovely because I think that's really what we all need in all aspects of our life because we can, again, the one person that we spend our entire lives with, we are the least gentle with. And how wild is that? Like, that doesn't even make sense, but it's just kind of, I think a lot of it is societal conditioning, a lot of it is generational conditioning. And I think we have an opportunity to change that just with these conversations and just finding teeny tiny ways to just be a little bit gentler with ourselves every day and taking time to just notice that and just celebrate it a little bit and just be like, good job. I was gentle with this thought. I've
Mm,
gotten really good at finding like, if anyone needs anything to celebrate or is having a hard time finding yourself a win in the day, let me know because I can find the wildest things to celebrate. I'm like,
yes. What we're today we were talking about being grateful to pay your trash bill, right? So
yes,
let's
I love
celebrate.
that. That's why it resonated so much with me. I'm like, I get to have the abundance to have somebody else do this. This is wonderful. Yes, let's celebrate that.
Yes, celebrate everything. So I want it, we're not shifting gears. We're like okay, we're going to take this fork of the conversation and go towards how this experience of becoming with B, how this has been different from what you've done before, because you have been here before. You have done this
Yes.
before, right? This is not your first rodeo with creating a brick and mortar. And when we, when like we were saying at the very beginning, when we effort and push and prove and like all of those we sometimes I'm like hesitating on saying, the masculine way of doing
Mm-hmm.
business, right? But it's like there is a difference, right? We're not framing this as like masculine bad, feminine good, right? Like that is not the sense here. But when we are fully in, like it's all about the structure, it's all about the grind. That is where it starts to break down. And
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it's bringing the balance, literally the balance back to where we are utilizing the structures that we need and we know what we need in that sense, and understanding that it takes aligned action is important. Those things, like those masculine traits are so important. The feminine intuitive flow of it is the piece that's so missing, and almost the conversation is blossoming, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still like there's a balance between, I'm not just going to sit and meditate this into existence, right? We
Yes.
need the structure, we need the action, but we need a balance. And so I want to hear your experience from before and how it's different this time and what you're feeling.
Yeah. So I look at it as, for me, I house it underneath the description of like when our ego is taking the driver's seat versus when our highest self and intuitive self is taking the driver's seat. And I think ego does have like a bad rap, or so I just kind of want to clarify that really quick. So we're all on the same page of when I say ego, what I mean. I'm not talking about ego as like the like egotistical, like I'm a badass, like blah blah blah. Not like that. I look at it as more as like our ego is there because it's trying to protect us. Like that is its purpose, right? So when our ego is in the front seat, it's been my experience that now looking back, I can see it, and I'll share more about this experience. It's when I'm trying to prove myself. It's when I'm feeling like concerned, like my core fear. I love working on myself. So I know that my core fear, I'm a number 2 on the Enneagram. I've now been learning human design with Hannah. So I'm like, all the information, working with an EMDR therapist, like, let's go. But what I've learned is that my core fear is that I am unworthy of love, and that I am very, very scared of not being connected with, and that I'm going to do something wrong that will cause somebody to not want to interact with me. So that's where my ego comes into play. And now I can see it. If that's my fear, what happened in my last experience was I wanted to prove myself. I was so scared. I needed to prove my worth. I needed to make it work. I needed to do these things. I needed to go to the extreme, like all of this stuff. So, in my last life, so most of my adult life, I've had a lot of real random jobs, but majority of my career has been spent in the craft beer industry on both the wholesaler side and brewery side and retail side. And it's awesome. I love that industry very much. My ex-husband opened a brewery, and we started dating when the brewery was about a year old. And I didn't really work there until around 2016. And he had bought out his business partner, like things were going really well. And then there was a decision to expand and build a new facility that was going from a very small little facility, like in a industrial park, like we did back in the day, before tap rooms were legal here. And then to build a 26,000 square foot facility. And about 4,000 of that was going to be a restaurant, and way bigger endeavor. And at that point in time, I was more of like yes, I believe in you. I think this is great. What do we want the customers to feel? What is it going to look like? What is our like mission statement? What brand color is everything? And is everything in the right font? Like, what do the bottles look like? Like all that kind of stuff, right? So I just kind of like went into it very excited. And fast forward, as sometimes it happens in business, you have grand plans and they do not work out at all the way that you anticipated. And that's what we encountered after we expanded. Like, we weren't able to open the restaurant before the holidays. We were doing a lot of private label stuff like that. And it wasn't a profitable part of the business, so that had to change avenues. In the United States, in most states, there's like the 3-tier system. So a brewery gets tied to a wholesaler, you choose your wholesaler, and then you're tied to them for like life, unless you can prove that they're not performing. And it's very, very hard to do. So our distributor was not what we had hoped that they would be after we had switched one time before. So there was just this kind of like, I don't want to say a comedy of errors, but like literally everything that could go wrong went wrong. So, and it was like our first restaurant, which is wild, like wild. Birth by fire, though, you figure it out. So fast forward a little bit. So we're getting into like end of 2017. And I had just given birth to our second daughter, Lucci, back in May. And I found out that I was having some autoimmune stuff going on, and my aunt was very sick. And sadly, she passed away in December of 2017. And this is all kind of relevant to the story. So what I wanted you to take away from that is everything's an S show. I'm starting to get real sick. My aunt, who is like my mom's soulmate and like love of our lives, is dying from cancer. So I go out because they lived in Las Vegas. I went out because I just had a feeling that like something was up. So I went out, surprised them, was anticipating being gone for, a handful of days, but ended up being out there for 2 weeks. And my mom and I were by her side when she passed, which we were very grateful for. And during that 2 weeks, my faith got very, like, I got deep into it, like deep into my spirituality, deep into God, lots of questioning going on, like all of that kind of stuff. So I come back from this experience, and my ex asks me, he's like, and everything was like a complete S show. He had to go back into production. So he's like, I think that you have the chance. Like, if anybody can like turn this around, I believe that you have the capability to do it. Do you want to act as the CEO? And I can tell you, Hannah, and friends that are listening, my gut reaction to that was no. But my ego and my insecurity and my worry about being loved, my worries about being accepted was like, yes. And in fact, I even took a couple days to think about it, and I still said yes. And I see that I made that decision because how could I say no? Like how could I say no when my husband at the time was like clearly in, like, it was a tough situation, right? So there was that. And then because of all of my insecurities, I had a chance to prove myself. So I'm like, so let me talk to you about how I went into like girl boss, red lipstick, like all of that, CEO. Oh my gosh, because I've always been like a title person. I'm like, what's the next title? Now I'm like, I don't even know what to call myself. Can I just be Lindsey? I don't need to be known as the owner. Like, I'm just Lindsey. Let's all be friends. So I went into this endeavor, and there's a lot I didn't realize how bad it was. And throughout this process, meeting with investors, living off of French fries, really ignoring all the red flags my body was giving me. Our daughters were younger. I had 2 stepchildren that Jason brought to our marriage are super awesome. I mean, it was a wild experience. And through that, there was a point in time, and I mean, there were times where there was not money in the bank account the day before payroll was due. Like, I mean, it was real tough. And it was, looking back, I don't regret any of the decisions that I made, because I had some money that I had come into that I put into the business, which he did not want me to do. But I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, if we don't, we'll have to declare bankruptcy. We would lose it anyway. So like, here we go. But again, at this time, I know I said this to you earlier, Hannah, it's like, I started having thoughts too of like, okay, is this hard because like the universe and God are like testing us how bad we want it, which is that ego thought, right? That's that like hustle hard mentality that we have baked into our society, and then the other thought was, which was my higher self trying to like be like, hey friend, or is it so hard because this isn't what it's supposed to be? But I kept pushing. I kept trying to make it work. Pushing, had to lay off people. It was heartbreaking. It was really hard. And it was hard too, because it was his dream that he had wasn't working out the way he had hoped. So that was like, another layer of stuff. And because we are both entrepreneurs, we both had that drive of like, let's do what we can. So in November of 2018, there came a time where I was in the emergency room twice in 1 week because I had this wild headache and my body was deteriorating. Like, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which has since not been the diagnosis, which is amazing, but a lot of symptoms of it. I couldn't get out of bed. I was getting really sick, like the hospital things. He had said to me after the second time, because they couldn't figure out what it was, like none of the migraine medicine was working, like, and I could barely get out of bed. And right around that time, Hannah, too, like, again, this is the ego. There was a negotiation that had to happen between a vendor that sold us equipment that was like not working properly. So there was that. Lawyers had to be there. Jason had to be there, and I am dying. Like in between my 2 ER visits, I drive up there and I'm like shuffling along, walking with my head down because I feel like I need to be there to help things to not go wrong. And I look back on that and I have such love for myself because now I can see I did that because I just wanted to be worthy of love. And I thought that's how I did it. That's how I would be loved, right? And afterwards, our lawyer was like, you do not look okay. So he drove me, our lawyer drove me to the emergency room,
My God.
upon which they still couldn't figure out what was happening, but they found medicine that like calmed me down and all that stuff. Out of that, Jason had said to me, he's like, I think, so I've always been a big believer in healing your body and then doing as much as you can. And then like peeping out the medicine route. Like, let's get your body to a good standing point as much as we can. And let's really see what's going on. So because of that, I didn't take the medicine. I started off not taking the medicine that the rheumatologist had recommended. And actually he wanted to put me on methotrexate, which I'm so glad that I did not take because I actually don't need it. But there was another one that I decided not to take. So I'm like, let me heal my body. Well, you can't heal your body on French fries, my friends. That is one thing for sure.
Yep.
But, he had said to me after that second ER thing, he's like, Linz, he's like, I think you need to consider taking the medicine because I don't want to be wheeling you down in a wheelchair at our daughter's graduation. And I was like, and that's when the change started happening. I hired a health coach. I started taking out gluten and dairy out of my diet. I got involved, like a friend of mine was selling Arbonne. So I did that and started feeling better. And then when your body starts feeling better, it's awesome. But then you open up the door to your mind starting to feel better, and then you start to see things differently. And I see this often with clients. I'm sure you do too, Hannah, of like, all of a sudden it's like things that you thought you were okay with, you're like, oh no, this isn't feeling right. And as you get to understand and really get in touch with the foods that feel good in your body and the foods that like make your body feel kind of like a little yucky, it's like that awareness of your body, you start to get in touch with your intuition, your higher self, you're like getting more connected. And then you start to understand how those experiences feel when you're interacting with people or at work and all of that. And, I very much had, and it was tough. I mean, I think we would have gotten to divorce at some point in time. We were together for about 10 years. But things were just really hard and all of the stress from the business was not helpful. But I remember I sat upright, like in the middle of the night, one night, I believe it was in July, and was like, I like had this like flash of awareness of like, I don't think this is what life is supposed to feel like. Like, I don't think this is what work is supposed to feel like. I don't think this is what a marriage is supposed to feel like, ugh. And then that's when the ball started rolling and we got separated, and we do co-parent very well, which is like awesome. We both kind of realized that like, okay, we can do this together, but maybe we're not like the best married people together, and that's okay. But yeah, it was through that it's like I obviously could not work at the brewery anymore, and I got involved with Arbonne. I never in a million years would have thought that I would work in a network marketing type situation. That shit is very hard, very challenging, so nobody hate on it. But it was through that and learning more about my body that I started to see how things felt differently when I would interact with different things. And during this time too, yoga became my church. I dedicated myself to going just once a week as we talk about small shifts. Yeah. And in that Sunday morning class, I would cry on my mat. I would feel into my body. I would do all these things. And then, you know, as I kind of emerged and started making these really tough choices in my life, um, because I knew they were the best ones for me, which is scary to do, things just started to unfold. So as I started to get into through my time with Arbonne, I realized how much I loved helping people see what's possible in their lives. And when I look back, that's always been my jam. Like I have found documentation from like when I was in college that verifies that this is always how I've been. So when I found out about health coaching, I was like, what? And then I started finding out about, I went to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition and it talks about our primary foods and our secondary foods. And primary foods are actually life foods. There's 13 of them: career, relationships, spirituality, home environments, home cooking, etc., belonging. You know, and secondary foods are what we actually ingest and digest. And for the first time, I was like, wait. So we're told that our health is what we eat and how much we move. Not the case at all.
Right.
In fact, after years of researching, working with clients and all that now, I'm like, I actually think stress impacts our, like, if we're going to do one thing, because I like to make it simple and fun size for people, there's one thing that we could do that's going to impact our lives the most. It is understanding where we are stressed out and learning what we want to do with that stress and how we work through it and what feels aligned and what doesn't, and then trying to crowd out the stress with things that are not stressful. And it was really through that process that, like, I don't know, it all just kind of unfolded. But I think it's like being open to what is possible, being curious, making tough decisions, and beginning to crowd out what is not feeling aligned to you. And understanding that when we feel like we're pushing too hard, like, it's not that it's not ever supposed to happen. I just don't think it's supposed to happen right now. And as I went through the process of birthing and be getting ready to open and everything, I can really like now confidently say, because I've experienced it, that it is possible, and that we should take the times where we feel that we're pushing and just be like, oh, wait a second. And truth be told, I'm not always aware of when I'm pushing, because now it's just real sneaky the way it shows up. So, but it's like, okay, wait, let's like pause for a second. Like, what is actually going on here? Why do I want this so bad? Or why am I pushing so bad? But I can assuredly say it is very scary to make choices and that go against what we're told, go against what we've learned in society generationally, that prioritizing ourselves is selfish, et cetera, et cetera. But again, I come back to, we're the only ones that we spend our whole lives with. And it's okay. It feels scary, absolutely, but it will be okay, because what's not okay is living a life that doesn't feel authentic and aligned to you. That's scary. And it's scary how quickly and easily we can normalize it, you know?
Thank
That
you.
was a lot. Yes, you are welcome, I think.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you for sharing and just pouring that out, because you're right. It's like there's not the personal and the business is always woven together. You know,
Yes.
we want to pretend that we can like compartmentalize these two things. And you know, I talk about this in my work all the time. I love working with entrepreneurs because business is personal.
It is.
Business is always personal, and what's happening in your personal life is going to affect your business, and what's happening in your business is going to affect your personal life, because it's all you. It's all part of you and who you are. And so what I hear from your story is this sense of needing to get to that point where you had to prioritize taking care of yourself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And like being like and that I won't go it through my whole story at this point, but it was really similar, right? Like
Yeah.
pushing and pushing and pushing in a place where I was not going to, I wasn't going to, I just didn't, it wasn't me. It wasn't, I was pushing to be a version of myself that was not my full self. And
Mhm.
it was like slowly killing me.
Yeah.
So,
What, and I know you've shared this story, but it's not coming to me right now, but what happened? Was there like an event that happened that made you be like, oh yeah, I'm out? Because I think about,
mhm.
for me, it was getting sick, and that's kind of what flipped it. And I see with clients, what's interesting is that it seems to be harder to make the decision when you are like fully okay
Mm.
versus when some type of event happened, like you get real sick or whatever, something happens that make you assess your life and then make the decision then. So were you able to do it like proactively, or did you like get sick or somewhere in between?
Yeah, it's sort of. I had the awareness. So this was in 2019. There was an occurrence in business where someone, you know, the supervising advisor basically had supported me and took his support away. And that was again like very very like the abandonment wound for me, very similar, right? Like not exactly the same, but that's my core wound, is the fear of being abandoned.
Yeah.
And so when he pulled his support from me because I did not do a thing that he wanted me to do, I I was like in an anxiety spiral. I had
Mm,
panic attacks in the bathroom at work, and it was like, and I had one at home that, I mean, it almost felt like a heart attack, like stiletto. I looked it up later. I was like, ooh, that's what I was feeling, like stiletto point, like into your chest. And I was like,
yes.
it was slow. And I was like sitting on the couch with my husband. And I'm like, this doesn't feel good. He's like, what's happening right now? I'm like, I don't know, but it's not good. Um, I didn't go to the emergency room. I went to the doctor a couple of days later, and they're like, seems fine. If it happens again, go to the hospital. Like, great, good to know. But it was through this like this pulling of support from me as an advisor, doing the thing that I do now that I'm extremely successful at and that
Yes.
I love, being told that I would not be successful at what I knew in my heart is
Yeah.
what I'm here to do in one way, shape,
Mhm.
or form. And I was having visions of, I was feeling so much anxiety, and I was, I mean, truly like depressed at that point, where
Mhm.
I would be driving to work, and
Mhm.
I was in the office every day, and I had to make a left turn at this one intersection. It was a big intersection where I started having these recurring thoughts of, if you know, I got sideswiped
Mm,
and no one else was hurt and it was just me.
yeah. Yeah.
No one else gets hurt. I'm not gonna harm myself. Like I wasn't at that point, but like if something else took me away, that my job and my family would be better off.
Mm,
And the thing that was like, this, my higher self was like, I was not listening to her again. Like same, like you're saying, like the ego drive was so
mhm.
strong through those years, that my higher self, she finally started to be able to like get through. And that's not you. That's not
Mm,
you. You have to get help. And so when I finally was like, I need I need to go see a therapist. That was the first time I'd ever seen a therapist, and a psychiatrist, so a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and started taking some, I think it was Wellbutrin at the time, like a depression medication, anti-anxiety, um, just to get through the day. And I would have those anxiety, like little, like not Xanax, but like really small ones, like
mhm.
I don't remember what they were called, but I would have to take them before going into meetings with this person, because I still had to meet with clients with this advisor who told me to my face that I was not going to be successful. And I was so stressed out that I mean, it was like the same, like work should not be this way. This is not how it's supposed to be. So I was working in therapy to figure out, how do I have these conversations? Because I know that things are not going the way they should. And I know I want to be able to show up to conversations powerfully and stay in my power, and also stay kind and say what I need to
Mhm.
say and stand up for myself and be an advocate for myself while also remaining kind. And
Yeah.
so that was like my therapy. Like that was what I was trying to work on. And what I found as I worked through that, Crucial Conversations,
Oh,
um, so good.
so good.
Such a good book. That was one of the ones I was like, okay, this is my Bible for the moment. I listened to it
Yes.
like 3 times in a row. And when I was working so hard for that to be how I was showing up in that place, and for it to still be just rejected out of hand, I was like, that was where it was like, okay, this is not working. And there was one final conversation where the other people who had been supporting me said, this isn't going to work out the way we thought it would. So here's the deal. Here's what's different now. You were supposed to get X, Y, and Z. This is why you were promoted. This is what it was supposed to be. Now it's going to be so much less, so much less than what I was working towards. And what they said was, sometimes people just don't work out the way you think they will. And I said,
Mm,
got it. And I walked out of that office, and for me, it was done at that moment.
yeah.
I had a recruiter had been like following up with me for a while. I had never responded back to him, but he had like reached out several times. And that day I was like, hey, what you got? Like, we're done. Um, and my higher self, again, I interviewed at 3 other firms over the next like 5 months or so. And my higher self just was like screaming. She's like, this is not the place for you. They
Mm,
do not know who you are. They don't know who
yeah.
you are.
Oh God.
And every time I went to like, is this the place? Is this the place? It's like, you need to do it on your own. What you want to create does not exist yet. You need to create it. And so that was me stepping in also in faith, and knowing that it would work out, knowing that X squared wealth planning was my first business. I launched in January of 2021, and I knew it would work out. And it's been such a wild ride, so much healing, so much growth, so many
Yeah.
dark nights of the soul, so many
Hmm.
tears. And yet it's like, for me, it's been that exact experience of entrepreneurship being like the rocket fueled path to self development,
Oh yeah.
right? Because
Yes.
the more that I love myself, the more that I trust myself, the more that I tune in to my intuition as well, the more in alignment I feel in my whole life. So,
Yes.
yeah.
I could not agree with you more. And Hannah, can I take a moment to thank you for sharing that those vulnerable thoughts that you were having with that intersection? This is something that I've been noticing has been more of a conversation that's been coming up lately. I was at a conference. Um, Coincidentally, I spoke at the Craft Brewers Conference this year. I never went when I worked in beer, but now that I'm not in beer, I got to speak at it, which was really cool. But there were quite a few of the speakers that were talking about these kind of fantasies, this like ideation, this and I have been there, and I've been there fairly recently, like in the last 3 months. It's been there was this one week where I was just like, whoo, it was a very, very hard week, and I think it's really important to share. So if anybody out there is having these thoughts, that it's like, people that appear very, very functional, like Hannah and I think most people look at us being like, oh, they have their shit together. That's
Right.
cool,
They got it
right?
all going on. Yeah.
But I think it's really important to talk about like that humanness behind what happens when we choose to grow, because I think our brains aren't wired to be happy all the time. So that's just something to like acknowledge. Like we would cease to exist as a species if that was the case, right? And then we live in a society that tells us if we're not happy and joyful all the time, then something's wrong with us. And here, by the way, here's some medicine for it. And I think when we choose to start to explore what it looks like to live a more aligned life and to listen to our higher self and our intuition and really get connected into our own personal divinity, there's darkness that comes with that, you know? And I think it can also be really scary when you're in this kind of entrepreneurial place too, because it's when you start to dig into, and I wonder, I'm curious of your thoughts with this, Hannah. It's like, it's almost like when we start to shed our ego and start to find, like, not feel the need to prove ourselves or to like prevent our core fears from happening. And, you know, when we're kind of like stepping out of that ego, like driven space from that piece, it's almost as if the process is even harder. I my chef and I were talking about this, is like, it almost feels like it could be easier to grind it out, to put your head down, to just go as fast as possible, to not look up, to just like hustle, hustle, hustle. Like that almost feels easy, even though ultimately it feels like shit and you burn yourself out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you choose to be an entrepreneur and do it from a heart-centered, intuitive, higher self place, where you also are growing personally and choosing to be open to that experience, that shit is real hard, because you're constantly like, not only are you like, and truly throughout this process, what I've said, it's been easy. Like, it's been wild how easy it's all unfolded. And to the point where people would ask me in the beginning, like, oh, how is it going? And I would like try to find things. But now I'm just like, you know what? It's easy. It's actually been really easy. But let me tell you, it has not been easy. Number one thing that's been the hardest throughout these last 9 months has been the mental side
Mm-hmm.
of not letting myself be unkind to myself, of the constant dialogue that I have to have, of just kind of like, yeah, this will be okay. This is a moment. Take a deep breath, being aware, being curious, like constantly, like that's really been the hardest part of this whole process. But I can't imagine not going through life feeling this way. Like, I would rather want the awareness and curiosity and the challenges that come from that versus being totally shut off from that and just kind of like blinders on trying to get to where we're going, but we don't even like know where we want to go. We're just like in the river. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I feel that where that's heading, um, is it's easier sometimes to feel like numbness is easier than feeling. And so
Yes.
because if you don't, the problem, quote unquote, is that when you are growing and healing and experiencing great joy, the other side of the pendulum is this deep grief, right? Is feeling those emotions that you've locked away for so long, that you stuffed down. And so when you open up to your intuition, these other things seem to happen more easily. While at the same time, you're actually feeling, things that you had like put into a box before.
Yeah.
And so when we're numb, when we're grinding it out, when we're literally numbing with alcohol, with TV,
Mm-hmm.
with drugs, when like literally numbing our experience, we we don't feel true joy. We don't feel peace. We
Mhm.
don't feel true love. And I mean, I can attest to that as well. Like the more that you
Mhm.
numb, the less that you actually feel. And so when we open ourselves up to, I want to feel peace, I want to feel deep joy and deep love, that you cannot feel the upper without feeling the lower. And so
Yeah.
it's just that you are feeling it all and expanding your capacity to love, expanding your capacity for compassion, expanding your capacity for understanding the human experience. And when
Mhm.
the more you allow yourself to feel, the more allow your own authentic feeling, your authentic emotions, the more you can authentically express
Mm.
as well.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's so important right now. I feel like we're really at a critical place in our lifetime of I feel like we have it there's like kind of two roads that we can go down, right? It's we can choose to numb out, continue to disconnect, like all of these things, devices, computers, like trying to seek this connection that we need on like a human level that our bodies and physiology only understands when it's with another human, right? We can go down this like artificial way, right? Which will never satisfy us the same way. And, or we can lean in and challenge that and push for more connection. But it starts with taking care of yourself and getting to know yourself and what you need and all of that. I mean, I just keep on getting back to the what we're seeing, like this, the hurt, the hate, the anger, like all of that kind of stuff. Those to me are all signs of disconnection, of people that have been hurt deeply at some point in their life so badly, or perhaps it's, generational, like just what they experienced and what they were around, growing up. And I'm just like, this is the time where we need to find ways to lean into each other. It's always my experience. I think about this with my kids or even myself, right? Like when my girls are acting out, when they're being, when they're like throwing a tantrum or what have you, which I love. It's just like a pure expression of emotions, right? It's just like I'm angry about this. But what I've learned is like the times where we act like this or when I'm throwing my tantrums, these are not the times where we're supposed to turn our backs. These are the times where we're supposed to be like, you holy crap, you need a hug. You need to be seen. You need to be heard. And the thing that's so hard is that we've become so dysfunctional with the way that we do that because of these platforms where we can say things without seeing the other human in front of them. We just like don't know how to lean in anymore. And then you start to get into worries about being judged or what people will think. And I'm just really hoping that through these examples and through this conversation, whoever's listening, it's even if you're just getting to know yourself just a little bit more, just pausing and just being like, ooh, like, what is that about? Like, this is feeling weird. Like, why am I feeling weird about this? Instead of just powering through it, I really believe that us doing that and learning how to do it more will help inspire and encourage other people to do that in their lives just by being ourselves without even telling anyone that they need to do these things. It's just like, just do it for ourselves and then just trust that the ripple will spread there because we all can use some more humanness in our life. And Hannah, I think about that amazing art that you created of the jar that's open. Yes, yes,
There, if you're watching there, that one.
that right there is what I'm talking about, and that's where I feel like we have this opportunity right now. And I'm not massive into astrology and all that stuff, but like I like those things. So I know enough, but I know that like this right now is a really great time to like lean into opening ourselves up to what's possible. And that starts with just getting to know ourselves better personally.
That is such a beautiful place to wrap up this conversation, I think. And Lindsey, because it's, who you are being. It's like literally saying who you are being matters and
Mhm.
helping nourish that in so many ways through what you're building and what we're
Yeah.
building together,
I
right?
know, it's so wild. It's so wild.
So where can people learn more, and where would you feel good directing people right now if they want to learn more about B and about you and what's going on?
Yes, yes. So definitely, you can visit our website, which is just nourishatbee.com. And there's a little, you can sign up for our newsletter, the Babble at Bee, and you could just get a little snippet. It's kind of a coming soon page right now, but it's very beautiful. And then I think like day to day, it's really great. Like I love my personal Instagram is at Lindsey Loves Wellness, and that's Lindsey with an E. And then also Bees is at Nourish at Bee. And those are great places just to check in for some different inspiration and just a reminder that it's totally okay and cool and amazing and important to just be all that you are.
And those will be in the show notes. So we will link to all of that as well. And Lindsey, I am like floored that we only met 3 months ago. It definitely
I
feels
know.
that's not
I
real.
know.
Like that's
I
wrong, right?
know.
That because I love you and I love your heart, and it's been so wonderful to
Oh,
be on this journey with you. And thank you. Thank you for everything.
yes.
Thank you for being with me today.
And thank you so much for this opportunity, Hannah. It just feels it is so life-giving to be able to talk about these experiences with you and just be able to share and just kind of, I don't like just be human together. So thank you for opening this up and also for being such a huge support and for sharing your energy in this beautiful building that we get to have together as well.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough. You are enough. And your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.